We're joined now by Husker line Sean Callahan. Sean, we'll discuss that in a second, but you were reporting some news yesterday regarding a potential receiver on Nebraska's radar, and that is Isaiah Nayer of Texas. When is he visiting, Sean, and what do we know about Isaiah Nayer?
Yeah, Isaiah Nayer, confirmed yesterday. He'll be in Lincoln this weekend, and that is the transfer portal visit window. The dead period is still going on for regular recruits, but they implemented a special visit weekend where you can go in and take visits for about a 4 or 5 day period before the actual recruiting period opens up to help transfers kind of get situated before classes start in January. And Nayer is expected to be at least one of 3 to possibly 5 recruits in Lincoln this weekend. So, they'll bring in a group. But Nayer, 2 years ago, he left Wyoming, and he was one of the top players in the Mountain West Conference. He was second team All Mountain West for Craig Bowl, and he was the hottest receiver in the transfer portal at that time. He chose between Texas, USC, Florida, Ole Miss. You can go down the line. He had in Tennessee. He had a number of major offers, and he got hurt in Austin. But he was projected to be possibly Texas's number 1 receiver in 2022. Then the injury knocked him out for the season, and he just never got off the ground this year in 2023. And entered the portal here for 1 more year, and I think things look fairly promising for Nebraska with him right now.
6'3", 215, right?
Yeah, big-bodied guy, and I think they're looking in the portal at receiver. That seems to be what they're looking for: a veteran, 1 to possibly 2 year portal receiver that's bigger-bodied, to give them something besides the young guys they have on the roster. And Jamal Banks from Wake Forest is the other target. He's 6'4", 205, and he's had 600 yards plus receiving each of the last 2 years. And he could be in this weekend too. I believe he will be in this weekend. And you never know on these portal guys; things can change. But there's a possibility of them getting maybe 2 of these bigger-bodied veteran receivers.
Sean, you're talking about maybe 5 portal visitors this weekend.
Yeah, Dante Daldwell, the running back out of Oregon, is scheduled to come in. And then X. Alexander, the Idaho linebacker, is another name to keep tabs on. He's a guy that they offered, and I do think there's something brewing there. So yeah, those would be the names, at least as of today, to zone in on. But I think there's a possibility of maybe another thing brewing here as the week moves on.
Alexander is that's an inside backer, right?
He was a former Arizona State recruit commit, and then Herm Edwards got fired, and the new Arizona State staff came in last year, and they just cut ties with all the kids in the class. They say we got to bring in a bunch of portal guys. The roster had 48 scholarship players at Arizona State at that point, and they needed to get some older portal players for this past season. So Alexander got cut on December 8th, goes and plays for Idaho. And, they've got a really good staff there that's done some great things there. They bring him in. He's second on their team in tackles as a true freshman with 75 tackles this past year. And, kind of blew up in the portal when he goes in this year. Nebraska was one of several Power 5 teams that offered him. But he's a guy to watch. Now, his dad and his brother played for the University of Washington. He's from the Seattle area. So that's definitely a factor, I think, to pay attention to, depending on how badly he wants to stay close to home. But that's a guy to watch this weekend for sure, too.
A lot of people are still curious, Sean, regarding quarterback for Nebraska. Raiola, obviously, in for the Huskers next year. But is there going to be any news at some point regarding a transfer quarterback for the Huskers?
Yeah, I think if they wanted to get one, they could. It's just a matter of what makes sense. And Sipple and I have had this conversation on our shows. They're almost
Steve
looking
Sipple.
for a guy
Sip.
that's good enough, but not quite good enough.
Right.
And it's tough because why do guys generally go in the portal? They want to start. They want to win a job. They want to be the guy somewhere. Well, at Nebraska, with Raiola, the nation's number 1 ranked high school quarterback coming in, and Daniel Callahan, an Elite 11 quarterback in his own right, and then Heinrich Harburg, a guy that won 5 games as a starter last year. It's just not a real selling situation, I think, for a lot of reasons. So nothing's really emerged there. And trust me, there are a lot of options they could do and bring in, but nothing's jumped out here as we go into the portal visit weekend.
Sean, you're a hoops fan too. Are you going to the Nebraska-Indiana game tonight?
Yeah, I am. A little too late for the Callahan girls, these 8:00 tips. So I had to round up a group to go out, but I'm looking forward to it. Should be an interesting game, and hopefully we get to see Rink Mass back in some capacity, because I think everybody knows, especially that North Dakota game, when you watch that game, how badly they missed his presence and how much they're going to need him here down the stretch. South Carolina State, they could have suited up a group of guys from the ticket, and I think they would have probably still won that game.
Wow. Now, wait a second.
We'd have to get a couple weeks to get in shape.
Yep, we need some conditioning.
Coach, we got Coach Bush on the bench. I mean, you'd coach him up, right, Coach?
He'd play. He was a great player at Bender.
Player coach.
Player coach Bill Bush.
Yeah, he could shoot. If there was a 3-point line, he would have averaged 50.
Correct.
What he says.
Correct.
Well,
It's documented.
For Sean, if I'm not mistaken, was on some of those really good Omaha South teams back in the day.
Well, have you ever heard of Eric Strickland?
Oh, yeah. Well, I forgot about that.
You guys
got a guy that played, and Jay can play. I've seen Jay coach, and I guarantee you Jay can still play.
Foreman was a recruitable player as a basketball player.
Absolutely.
Yeah, Jay can play.
We'd probably focus there, and then we just try to free up Rico.
So my joke was really not a joke. I mean, the ticket team would put a pretty interesting matchup up on a basketball court.
Are you expecting back? And I know I get preoccupied with how big the crowds are at PBA. Are you expecting a packed house tonight, Sean?
I am. The South Carolina State crowd stunned me. There are not a lot of places in the country that you would get a crowd like that.
Good crowd.
On a Friday night, right after Christmas, the students were out of town. The 300 levels were full. I mean, they had everything open in the arena. I mean,
God,
and it was and they've done a good job in the arena, like in terms of the service and the lines. After Trev kind of shook the trees last year when they weren't up to par, they've done a really good job with handling the crowds. And Friday's crowd I was like, wow, I cannot believe this many people showed up. I mean, that game was over in the first 5 minutes.
It was. It was.
There was a lady next to us, and she was playing solitary on her phone the entire game.
That was Bill. That wasn't a lady.
Bill Bush playing solitaire.
Hey,
got bored of the games.
Did Trev, he shook the trees?
Well, last year when the service level at the arena wasn't, they weren't staffing the concession. It might have been 2 years ago, a year or two ago.
Yeah.
They didn't have enough people working in the arena at all the stands.
COVID.
And, and they've got it cleaned up in there where, they've done a really good job as far as handling the crowds. And
so it wasn't just workers goofing around. There just wasn't enough of them.
Yeah, and then their payment machines are different now. I mean, they used to have a deal where you had to sign your receipt, sign tips. Now it's one of those deals where you decide on the screen, you just tap it. I mean, they've got a lot better system, and they got beer everywhere. So
that helps.
Happy.
They're with the times.
Beer everywhere.
Sean is great on the concession reports.
I like
always has been. I'm serious.
So it's the first thing I brought up today.
It's important.
The first thing we mentioned was where the concession line is going to be like.
Sean, always good stuff.
God bless you.
Enjoy
Sean.
the game. We'll chat with you again next week.
Okay, guys. Thank you.